The ceiling for what tech can do these days is really high, especially when it comes to home entertainment. While 4K TVs have been around for quite a while now, they can still get pretty expensive, and to be honest, a lot of people are still pretty happy with their HD TVs anyway. So why buy a brand new console like the Series X with its high-end graphics and 4K output if you aren't going to get the most out of it anyway? We don't really see powered-down consoles launch alongside the big new flagships, but Microsoft have done it here with the Xbox Series S, allowing budget gamers and families who just want something to game on a piece of the next-gen action right now. I've been playing with the Xbox Series S for quite a while now, and I can safely say it is totally worth it, but it's not a budget product. G'day, you're watching Tech Finder. As always, links to everything we talk about are linked below in the description. And hey, if this video was helpful or informative to you, please throw us a like when we're done. So it turns out the Series S has more in common with the Xbox Series X than I thought it did. Both have these exact same ports on the back, including HDMI out 2.1, 2 USB plugs, an Ethernet port, and this storage expansion slot, which I'll get to in a moment. Both have identically fast solid-state hard drives, although this one has far less space. You bored? And they also play all the same games, with many actually being optimized for whichever console you choose, which is handy. That means if you do pick up the budget Xbox, you're not getting inferior versions of games because of the lower specs. The developers will tune the game specifically for what this system is capable of. So what are the differences? Well, this doesn't have a disk drive. It only outputs 1440p. The larger Xbox does 4K, and this only has 4 teraflops of power, while the Xbox Series S has 12 teraflops. 3 times the teraflops may sound like a big difference, but it doesn't mean this is only a third as good. Right now, a lot of the best games you can play on the new Xboxes are from last generation anyway, and the Series S does a great job of playing those. It certainly feels like an improvement over the Xbox One, and even when you jump into the bigger next-gen games or those that have been optimized for next-gen, it looks and feels great anyway. Load times are fast, frame rates are solid. This is certainly the best I've ever seen out of a home console. I haven't played on the Xbox Series X yet, and I'm sure it's a bit better, but honestly, I cannot fault the Series S at all. I love playing on this thing. It never seemed to struggle no matter what kind of game I threw at it, and it never even really fanned up and made much noise out of this honking big fan hole. Speaking of this fan hole, it's a weird design, isn't it? When it was first announced, I remember seeing a lot of divisiveness over this thing. Some people loved it, some people hated it. It's really just a big rectangle with this big black round vent sitting on top, starkly contrasting with the rest of the bright white body. Honestly though, who cares what this looks like? Of any console ever made, this one probably needs to be seen the least. This Xbox is designed purely for efficiency, squashing all that computing power into a relatively small box. Unlike most consoles where you're constantly swapping discs or cards or if you're old cartridges, once this is set up, you don't really need to have it that accessible, so who cares what it looks like? In fact, unless you really want to proudly display this, it makes more sense hidden away behind the TV or in a TV cabinet cupboard.
This is actually how I've got mine set up. The Xbox sits directly behind the TV, so you don't actually see it while you're playing from the couch. You can still reach the USB plug and the on-off switch, but otherwise, it's completely clean. Minimalist TV setups. Very 2021 invention.
I kind of stopped using my Xbox One a few years ago because I just felt like I was constantly fighting with the UI. But here, the software and user interface feels like the best I've seen on any modern gaming console. It just lets you play your games and do what you need as you need it. Here it just feels second nature. Things are where you'd expect them to be, and everything is only 1 or 2 clicks away. The most impressive feature that lets you play however you want though is definitely Quick Resume. Both of these new Xboxes have this really neat ability to pick up right where you left off on any game, even if you open up another game. So say you're playing a single player game like Zoo Tycoon and a friend jumps on and invites you to play Call of Duty multiplayer with them. You don't need to worry about saving or cancelling out of your game anymore. You can simply swap to Call of Duty and you'll pick up right where you left off next time you open Zoo Tycoon. What I found really interesting was this actually works if you unplug your console as well. So if you're moving your console around a lot, and look, it's pretty small and light, yeah, it's a pretty useful feature. I think this feature is super useful, especially if you're the sort of person who jumps between different games or if you share this with a family. Honestly, I love the feature and I do hope it becomes a staple in more game consoles as time goes on, because it really does let you play how you want with zero stress about where your save games are going. Quick Resume is all thanks to the really fast solid-state hard drives in these, but I do have to admit, I find it odd that the digital-only Series S comes with half the memory. The Series X has 1 terabyte, this only has 512 gigabytes. Of course, you don't get access to the full 512 gigabytes because 148 gigabytes of storage space is taken up by the system files. So really, you're starting out with 364 gigabytes of space. When you consider that many of the most popular games take up anywhere between 50 and 100 gigabytes already, you're quickly going to fill up your Xbox with games. For example, this is where I ended up after 1 day of trying this thing. It's full. Because this doesn't have a disk drive, you do have to download every single game you want to play to the hard drive. So you will quickly find yourself having to pick and choose your favorite games that you want on the system at all times while deleting the rest. And then you'll find yourself having to do this again and again every time you download a new game. On the Series X, you still have to install disk-based games, so the hard drive is going to fill up pretty quickly too, but it does come with 800 gigabytes of usable storage out of the box, which is over double the S's 364. Considering the entire point of the Xbox platform these days is so focused on Game Pass subscription with access to over 100 games, this just isn't enough space, especially when the next generation of games are likely to get larger and larger over time. I get this is supposed to be a cheaper console, but I really feel like memory shouldn't have been skimped on here, and I would have at least liked a 1 terabyte option. There's a slight consolation with the S though. A lot of the larger games come about 30% smaller than on the X because they just don't need to come with the larger 4K enabled graphics. I do appreciate that, and your hard drive space will too. Older games that you download can actually run off any hard drive, so that's nice, but if you want to play next-gen games off a hard drive, you have to buy the official storage expansion, which costs $350? No, thank you. No one should be buying that. So while the Series S is cheaper up front, it still may end up costing you more in the long run if you find the hard drive space is too small and need to upgrade. Not to mention, you just don't have the chance to trade or sell your disc-based games on the secondhand market if you're so inclined. They're also pretty crummy if you have a bad internet connection because that's the only way you're getting all of your games into this thing. It may seem silly to be saying this in 2021, but honestly, it is still quicker for some people to go to the shops and buy a disc than downloading a video game. There is one more downside about not having a disc drive on this thing. If you're a long-time Xbox gamer, you're also missing out on one of the coolest features. Both of these consoles are fully backwards compatible with almost every Xbox game ever released. I'm talking the original Xbox games from 2001 and anything since. I was pretty excited to discover old Xbox Live Arcade games I bought 14 years ago, ready to download to the S. But the Series X lets you pop your old physical discs in, and they'll probably work. If that kind of thing excites you and you've got an old collection that you're kind of thinking about dusting off again, well, you can do it. Just go for the Xbox Series X. So why would you buy an Xbox Series S? All in all, the Series S can't really be classified as a budget option because due to its lack of disk drive and limited hard drive space, it may actually end up costing you more in the long run. If you have a slow internet connection or are on a really tight budget, I'd actually hold off on getting into next gen for now and possibly try to find a deal on last gen consoles. There's still plenty of really good games to try on those, and they're getting cheaper. Also, if you're a specs freak, a hardcore power gamer who loves their graphics in 4K resolution, or someone with a sizable collection of old Xbox games ready to play again, you're probably better off going for the Series X. If none of those people sound like you though, the Xbox Series S is your console. It feels next gen, it runs perfectly, and it comes with an enormous gaming library right off the bat, especially if you sign up for Game Pass. Despite my complaints about the hard drive, I am genuinely impressed with this thing. I love it, and I'm pretty chuffed that Microsoft decided to release it alongside the bigger, more expensive version. It just opens up next-gen gaming to many more people, and that is not a bad thing. Also, for the record, even though I don't think you should care about what this looks like, it is so ugly. Just like every Xbox ever made. I mean, look at these things. Yuck. What, don't agree with me? Well, change your mind in the comments below, and while you're at it, hit like and subscribe to Tech Finder. I'm gonna go put this back behind my TV where I can't see it. Oh, actually, there is one more thing. Chris Stead wrote a really interesting article about the Series S over on the finder.com.au website, where he makes the case for buying this over the Series X, especially if you're a family. Go check it out. I'll see you next time.